Lately, I've been challenging myself to try new styles of photography to keep things fresh and interesting, and I'm excited to share my first ever experience shooting long exposures. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you'll know that my usual style of photography is pretty run and gun. I'm normally walking around just looking for small things that capture my eye and I can make interesting compositions out of. Taking the time to be more deliberate and purposeful isn't something that I have necessarily sought out in my photography. So to break that habit and really push myself, I took my D700 to a beautiful location called Burleigh Heads here in my hometown of the Gold Coast and tried my hand at long exposures for the first time. I'm not going to lie, I found this whole experience actually pretty difficult from many aspects. Let me just say straight up that I did not do this alone. My husband, Lux, came along to film this experience and help me make this video, but also just guide me through the process because long exposures can be a little bit complicated. He doesn't have heaps of experience with this style of photography either, so it was fun to kind of team up and work it out together. So while I use a tripod at home a lot to film these videos for you, I honestly never take one out with me. Most of the tripods that we own are those heftier, bigger ones that are suitable for video, and that's why I don't really lug them around with me. And then in my garage at home, I also own a bunch of kind of just flimsy tripods that just, to be honest, aren't that great. A while back though, we got a tripod that was just a nice sweet spot between the two that I just mentioned. You can adjust the angle of the legs, and whilst it's still a bit of a cumbersome thing to use, it worked perfectly well for this. We were also going to use this little net here and weigh it down with some rocks. It just sits like in the middle of the tripod, but that just didn't really work out in the field practically. Just things weren't exactly how we expected them to be. Already, I've got so much more gear than I normally would have, and I've had to be so much more planned. So this is definitely a different experience for me. So I mentioned I used the D700, and I think this was a bit of an emotional decision because I am completely DSLR obsessed at the moment. But when I was out in the field, it became pretty evident that it would have made a lot more sense, been a lot easier to use my X-T4. Having to bend down and awkwardly look through the viewfinder was pretty uncomfortable. I was also walking across rocks full of moss, so they were pretty slippy. I was just generally not trying to fall over. I am not the most outdoorsy person, so again, it was a challenge from this point of view. Also, the screen was very hard to see, which made it difficult to know if I was getting anywhere with my long exposures, but kind of added to the intrigue, and I was excited to get home and look at them. I think for this style of photography, it became evident really quickly that a mirrorless would just be so much better, or even just a later model DSLR that was able to have live view. Nevertheless though, we made it work with the D700, which I love, and we learned a lot along the way. When we first arrived, there was still way too much sunlight, so we struggled to get any length in the exposure. We stacked up an ND64 with an ND4 and an ND8, which was just what I had at home that would fit. This wasn't really enough, and even at f16, I could only get a second or two length in my exposure. Luckily, my ND64 filter was magnetic, which meant that I could just compose the photo and then pop it straight back on, because once it's on, I can't see anything through the viewfinder. As the light dropped over the next 30 minutes though, this became much less of an issue, and I was able to get exposures ranging from 10 to even 30 seconds, which was great. At first, I was using full manual mode, but as the sun was going in and out of being blocked by the clouds, the exposure times were all over the place. So I switched over to aperture priority, and that just made things a lot easier. I was using the 35mm f2D, which is honestly one of my favorite lenses. It's probably the most used in my lineup. I originally planned to use a 28mm, but I'm glad I went with the 35 because it was just right for the compositions I wanted to make, with a lot of rock in the foreground and leaving the sky quite minimal, as there wasn't a lot of color to work with, unfortunately. One of the most challenging parts of this whole experience was the fact that the shutter release cable that I ordered for this didn't come in time. It actually got dropped off while we were out, which is super frustrating. So I had to use the self timer, which isn't isn't ideal. We found that 2 seconds wasn't really enough time to avoid any camera shake from pressing the shutter, so we went with 5 seconds to just give a bit more of a buffer. I was trying to time my shots for when the waves were coming over the rocks and there was a lot of white water for that, dramatic kind of look. And this was really difficult with the 5-second delay. Also, something kind of annoying with the D700 is you have to choose between either mirror lockup or self timer, not both. So I wasn't able to use mirror lockup. I'm not sure if this actually really mattered that much though with the quite far away subject matter. In terms of focus, I obviously used manual focus and for most just went to infinity, but on a few I deliberately set focus to a particular rock in the foreground to give a bit more intention to the image. Pretty much all of the images were taken from f11 to f16. This lens can go to f22, but I wanted to try and stay as close to f11 as I could while still getting a decently long exposure, as that should make for a sharper image. One other step in the process was, as much as I could remember to, I was closing off the viewfinder as well. So there was a lot going on for me. Lots to remember, lots to keep track of, timing the waves, watching the water, trying not to fall over. If you have any comments or helpful hints so far, please let me know, because I am sure that there are plenty of you in the audience who have tried long exposures many times and can offer me some guidance. This is wildly different to any kind of photography that I have done or would normally choose to do. So it's, genuinely so different. And I'm finding it really relaxing. Like, aside from getting over all the rocks to get here, sitting here, feels just so much more relaxed and meditative, waiting for the right moment. I said to my husband who's filming now, it kind of reminds me, or is how I imagine fishing to be even. Which isn't something that I do either. But I'm interested to get home and see the photos because I can't really see on the LCD screen because it is still quite bright. Really, this probably would be better as the light lowers, but we just had the time, so we thought we'd come out and give it a go. So coming up, I want to talk about the results and discuss the images with you. But before I do that, I want to tell you about the amazing sponsor of today's video, PicDrop. I deliver a lot of images and videos in my commercial work, and I've never been overly happy with the standard photo delivery services. They are quite clunky, and it can be difficult for clients to provide immediate feedback. This is why I was so happy to start using PicDrop. PicDrop is a platform made by photographers for photographers, so it's considered all the parts of the process that go into image delivery, and it's made it slick, seamless, and professional. With over 180,000 creatives already delivering and proofing images effortlessly, it's the go-to time-saving tool for photographers working with others to bring exciting concepts to life. It's the professional step-up I was looking for as I grow my photography and videography business, but I think it would be great for anybody who's working in a visual medium and collaborating with, say, agencies or galleries even. My favorite feature is how others can mark up images and choose what they like best. I think that's such a smart addition to make the proofing process simple and easy. If you are looking for a software solution as a photographer, PicDrop is going to be game-changing for you. Click the link in my description to redeem your 2 months of free PicDrop, or head to www.picdrop.com/go/Lucy Lumen. Check it out, guys. It is such a great service. Honestly, I am surprised. I am not trying to say that these are the most amazing long exposures ever taken or even, the most brilliant photos, but it definitely captured that magical, ethereal, misty quality that we were hoping to get. And I was surprised at how many of them turned out. I shot these in RAW and edited them in Lightroom, making use of the adaptive color and resolution enhancements. I've added some grain as I personally prefer that look, and I think it suits this kind of vibe. I tried to avoid the temptation to over-edit these photos. It's always easy to crank up the clarity and get that kind of HDR look, but I just think that kind of ends up looking tacky, and I prefer something that feels more organic. The files from the D700 are so nice, and the shots that were a bit over or underexposed were pretty easy to balance out. One of the main reasons I chose the D700 is because there is so much flexibility in post, and that was kind of just security when going out and trying something completely different. I knew that I would have a little bit of room to play with in post. The earlier shots are definitely not bangers here, guys. You can see that the water hasn't really come in yet. We're not getting that, dramatic feel, and the light's definitely not low enough. I'm only getting a few second exposures here, but it's good that I went out early and I could really see the difference. And I know next time I do it, I will make sure that I head out much later. It gets slightly better as we go. This image here still doesn't have that drama to it. There's not enough water in the foreground, but starting to see some compositional elements here come together. Granted that I am not a landscape photographer at all, so having this much kind of scope is very different for me. I really liked that we had the beautiful coastline and then the buildings, the skyscrapers in the background, and they're kind of foggy, kind of made me feel a little bit like Blade Runner-y. When I was processing these photos, I did notice that you can, when you zoom in, see some of the surfers because there was heaps of people surfing at this time. You can see them. They kind of look like little ghosts in the photo, which I thought was really cool. I think about an hour before dark is the sweet spot here, and where the photos started to be more how I imagined them to come out. This one here I really like because of the layering, and I like that we can see through the water, we can see the moss on the rocks, and then we're getting some of that mist and then a little bit of the sky. I do wish the sky had a little bit more color to it that day, but fingers crossed it'll be like that next time. This image here is one that I showed my mum, and she was like, wow, this is so beautiful, and was so interested in the photo. And I think this is a lot more pleasing than the kind of photography that I normally do. It's definitely a lot more accessible. It's got that, drama, and I just love the way the water is sort of misting around the rocks. It looks genuinely ethereal, and I think that this is exactly what we had in mind when we went out. So I'm feeling pretty proud that we went out to do something completely new, and we're able to come away with a photo that we feel kind of nailed it, I guess. I've talked a lot on the channel lately about using photography to improve your mental health. Obviously, we all love watching YouTube videos, but I really want them to inspire people to actually get out there and take photos. It's very easy to get in a slump with your photography and just sort of keep taking photos of the same thing. So challenging yourself to do something like I did with these long exposures is a great way to creatively challenge yourself. It really reinvigorates your love for photography too, because you have to switch on your mind. I had to pay so much more attention to every aspect of this experience than I normally would in even my commercial work, where I kind of know what I'm going to get. I know what I'm going to use, and a little bit of me is mailing it in because I'm doing it so much. I also think that this was a great overall experience, not just for the photography, but also from a mindfulness point of view. It got me outside. It involved quite a lot of exercise and climbing, which is something I wouldn't normally do. It was a great way to unwind. I was out there just looking at the water, hearing the sounds of it for a couple of hours, and then I also got to take photos. So it just felt like a really nice thing to do, kind of how I imagine people who knit or fish have these like moments of solace and calm. Life is really tough right now, guys. So I hope that this inspires you to try something new, take your mind off of all of the ills in the world right now and doing something like a creative challenge, or just getting out and getting super immersed in photography, because it is really all about noticing those little things, appreciating the world around us, and just being creative. Let me know if you have any hot tips below, or if you want to see me try any other photography challenges in the future. I'm up for anything, guys. So comment below and let me know. Don't forget to check out that link for PickDrop and try them for free for 2 months as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.